Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
The wife broke her verbal contract with her husband, but what was the point of it? Today's story with a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. Here I am, 45 years old, and my wife Glenda is a year younger. We have been married for 25 years, so this year we celebrated our silver wedding anniversary. We went on a week-long cruise in the Western Caribbean and enjoyed this time of renewal incredibly. Our son Alan recently turned 25. After receiving his degree in electrical engineering, he met and married his lovely wife Brenda, who brings joy to our lives. Our daughter Alice is 1 year younger than Alan. She has a degree in music education and works as the assistant choir director at our local high school, where she loves her job. She recently married Edward, and they act like lovebirds every time we see them. So far, none of them have given us grandchildren, but we're even glad to get a break and enjoy our empty nest, so we don't rush them on the matter. Glenda and I have had an idyllic family life. We always supported each other and took care of each other's needs. Our love life may not be as active as it was at the beginning of our marriage, but we are both completely satisfied with the frequency of our intimate meetings. She often played Call's Bubbly Kill It and said that it accurately expressed her feelings for me. This girl knew exactly how to make me feel loved. We often spend time with our friends Bob and Teresa. I've known Bob since high school, and we've been best friends ever since. Glenda and I are godparents to their 3 grown and married children, and our children have always called them Uncle Bob and Aunt Teresa. Even though we are not related, our children and their children are more like siblings since we spend a lot of time together. We always had a good time and went on vacations together more than once. Of course, Glenda is the most beautiful woman in the world to me, but to be honest, Teresa comes in second. However, we have always respected boundaries. We danced with each other's wives, but there was never any affair. Following Glenda, I would probably sacrifice my life to protect Teresa and Bob if necessary, and I'm sure they feel the same. That's how close we are as 2 couples who love each other. Just when everything seemed perfect, something went wrong. Due to unusual sensations in her body, Glenda went to the doctor and was immediately referred to an oncologist. I went with her to an urgent appointment, where she was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer with metastasis. We were told that stage 4 pancreatic cancer cannot be cured, and a person with terminal cancer usually does not live more than a few months. However, there are treatments that can help a person at this stage of cancer feel better through palliative care. Until the moment she felt something was wrong, she had never felt sick. The doctor said the signs could easily go unnoticed. A person might not know they have cancer because they do not feel sick. Even if there are symptoms, they may not bother you. The oncologist said he believed she had about 6 months to live. He indicated that the first 4 of these months could still provide her with a good quality of life, while the remaining months might be better spent on palliative care and pain management until she leaves. To say that this was a shock for us is an understatement. We soon passed this information on to all the people important to us. Alan and Alice, along with their spouses, spent several days at home expressing their love and support. They offered to stay indefinitely, but Glenda wouldn't hear of it. She steadfastly did not want their lives to be disrupted any more than necessary. Bob and Teresa were just as shocked as we were. We were all very close, and their love and support were priceless to us. Glenda knew they would be there for me, supporting me after she left, and she asked them to make sure I didn't break down and grieve for her for too long. Right in front of our best friends, Glenda urged me to start dating again and get married after a reasonable time. I wasn't ready for this conversation, so I didn't say anything in response. I felt like she needed to express her feelings to deal with the many emotions I knew she was feeling. I loved my wife immensely and was determined to be the best husband to her until the bitter end, no matter how hard it would be for me to lose her. I decided to stay close to her. Glenda, in her infinite wisdom, didn't want to waste time feeling sorry for herself. I suggested that she quit her job, but she insisted that work helped keep her afloat and that she needed it for consistency. But something happened to her desire for a night, which I must admit turned out to be a nice bonus for me. She insisted that we enhance our intimate life. Not only did we start having an intimate more often, but she also became very adventurous, wanting to try anything and everything at least once. Many of the things we tried were probably very uncomfortable for her, but she didn't care. It was as if she was fulfilling some kind of wish list. It's been 2 months since she was diagnosed, and she is exhausted. It makes me feel uneasy. Hank, are you enjoying our nightlife lately? Yes, dear, it seems to me that you are overdoing it. I'm not complaining, understand. Every moment with you is special and unforgettable. That's what I'm trying to do, honey. I'm leaving soon, and I want us to have enough special intimate memories together to last a lifetime. I don't want to waste a single moment. I guessed what you were trying to do. I'm ready, Glenda. Whatever you want, whenever you want. I'm so glad to hear that, Hank. I have long wanted to talk to you about something, and perhaps now is the time. Of course, honey. What's on your mind? I don't want to waste time, so I'll say it straight. Hank, you know that I love you with all my heart. There is not a single cell of my heart that does not belong completely to you. You are the perfect husband any woman could dream of, and I thank you for giving me happy memories that I will take with me when I leave. We started having an intim a lot more often, and I insisted on this primarily for your benefit. I want my husband to be completely satisfied when I leave this world and move on to the next. Glenda, I enjoyed every moment of our lovemaking. I couldn't ask for a better wife, and I would like us to continue making memories with each other. I'm not forcing myself to have a night with you, Hank. I crave it like an addiction, like I'm grabbing life and squeezing every last drop out of it. I constantly think about night and crave new sensations before leaving this world. Before we got married, you told me that you had 3 other intimate partners before you met me, and that doesn't bother me at all. As you know, there was no one for you, and I am so glad that I gave you this gift. Hank, I was thinking I'd like to experience what it's like to be with another man before it's too late. I'm not talking about a novel, we're talking about one weekend, and after that, this feeling will be forever in the past. Will you support me in this, Hank? I can't explain why, I just need it. I couldn't believe my ears. I wasn't ready to hear this. I know she is dying and wants to experience life to the fullest, but should she destroy me for that? Honey, I hope it's just a hormonal phase you're going through. I hope this goes away soon, or that you are joking and are not seriously making this request to me. Please tell me you're not serious. I'm serious. I don't have the luxury of time to play. That's why I wanted to talk to you about this directly. This is important to me, Hank. It occupies almost all my thoughts. I can't get this idea out of my head. I need this, please, Hank. Please tell me you understand and give me this selfless gift of life experience. She begged, and my head was spinning. I'm not kidding, she wants to have a night with another man and have me approve of it. I would give her my right hand to give her almost everything she wants, but I can't do it. Glenda, I have loved you from the day we met. You have always been the best wife a man could ask for. I would sell everything I have and give it to you, but I don't see how I can share you with another man. But before we go any further, who do you think this man will be? Were you planning on going to a bar and picking up some random stranger? Of course not. Don't be funny. I will never risk bringing you illness. I thought about it a lot and talked to Teresa and Bob for a long time. They understand my circumstances. I couldn't be with some random stranger, it has to be someone I know, love, and respect. Bob is the man I would want to spend just one weekend with. Then this need will be satisfied, fulfilled, and left behind forever. So you already talked to my best friends behind my back and convinced Bob to have an intim with you for the whole weekend? I don't think it took much effort, 30 years of friendship flushed down the toilet. Don't be funny, Hank. They are my best friends too. We are both godparents to their children, not just you. You will never give up the friendship you have with them. She is indestructible. You are not the kind of person who gives up and gives up everything. You always find ways to cope with any difficulties. This is one of the best things I love about you. Teresa offered to spend the weekend with you in my place. You'll have so much fun with her that you won't even notice my absence. So you are planning to cheat on me with my best friend? He will cheat on his wife, and his wife is planning to cheat on her husband by being with me? And you think that I will be happy to cheat on you with her as a consolation prize? You have to be kidding. I'm not kidding. Nobody is cheating here, dear. I offer an exchange. There's no cheating here if you know about it in advance and participate. That's why I'm talking to you now. Nothing has happened yet, I swear. I need this, Hank. If you love me, you will allow me this as my dying request. Stunned by her words, I looked at her with disgust. So, you play this card, if I love you, and you're not even sure what I love? Moreover, calling it a dying request is low. You're out of your mind, honey. This is madness. I can't agree to such a crazy idea. I'm telling you straight, if you do this, it will be the end of us. Undeterred, she continued, Hank, from the day we got married, you have always exceeded all my desires and expectations. You took me to exotic places on our vacations, always provided the best luxury cars for me, and allowed me to buy all the clothes and shoes I could want. Why is this so different? Have I ever sent you on vacation so you could be alone with another woman? No, it was always you and me. Did you buy these things to wear for someone else? No, you bought them to please me. It was always just the two of us. Glenda, this may be too much to expect from you now, but it will ruin our marriage for me, darling. Try to look at it this way. After my death, you will probably be intimate with several other women before you marry again. I won't have that privilege. Don't you understand that what I ask is only fair? I'm sorry that you had to make such a huge sacrifice to be with me and no one else all this time. Once you are free of me, you can try as many men as you want. Hell, you won't even have to worry about pregnancy or illness. You're a lucky girl, I said sarcastically. Her irritation began to grow. Look, I've always put my needs second and taken care of you and our children. I don't regret a single second of this, but now I feel like you should be a little more understanding and put your fragile male ego on the back burner just this once and let me have it. Let me ask you a question, Glenda. If you didn't get cancer, would your bucket list still include wanting to have a night with another man? Be honest. I do not know. Maybe. Well, thank you for your honesty. I'm sorry that I'm not good enough for you. She winced but continued to insist. Let me ask you a question, Hank. If I never got cancer and asked you for permission to be with another man, would you selfishly deny me that experience? Of course not. Once we got divorced, you could have all the experiences you wanted with anyone, as much as you wanted, but you would never have me again. She ignored my threat and continued undaunted. Didn't you always want me to have everything? You always gave me more than I ever asked for. Will you begin to refuse me now that I am asking you to fulfill my dying request? Glenda, I once believed that I was your everything. Thank you for showing me the error of my ways and correcting me in this regard. She started crying and ran out of the room. Normally, I would do my best to comfort her, but this was different. I hoped she would change her mind before it was too late. I heard her talking on the phone to someone, but I couldn't make out what was being said. 10 minutes later, I heard a car drive up to our house. Bob and Teresa couldn't just stop by for a visit, this was an ambush. While she went to greet them and let them into the house, I quietly walked out the back door and went for a walk around the neighborhood. I left my phone on the kitchen table so it would be difficult to contact me. I had a lot of thoughts to consider while walking. When I returned an hour and a half later, their car had already left, so I felt that their attempt to surprise me had failed. Where have you been? I was so worried. Bob and Teresa stopped by for a visit, and we didn't know where you were, Glenda said worriedly. When you were crying and upset earlier, I felt like we both needed some space, so I went for a walk around the neighborhood. I don't remember Bob and Teresa saying they were going to stop by today. What happened? She gave me a dissatisfied look. They were nearby on business and decided to stop by for a while. We've both visited each other unexpectedly many times over the years. You know that. It's a shame you missed them. They really wanted to talk to you about our recent conversation. I assure you that their desire is absolutely one-sided. I have no desire whatsoever to discuss the atomic bomb you dropped on me with any of them. But they are our best friends. Your best friends. Who better to discuss what's on your mind? They were my best friends too, but that ended today. From now on, they are your best friends. I will have nothing to do with them anymore. You can't be serious, Hank. Why are you so stubborn about this? All I did was talk to you, nothing more. Are you ready to throw away a lifelong friendship without even talking to them? You're better than this. I know it, and so does Bob. I think you've already talked to them about our recent conversation when they were here. Of course I talked to them. What did you expect? They are our best friends. That's what friends do, listen to each other and help each other through difficult times. I thought so. And what wise advice did dear old Bob give you about our problem? They both know what kind of person you are, Hank. They agree that you are the kindest, most understanding husband, father, and friend anyone could wish for. He reminded me that it was you who helped him get a job in the same place where you work. He said he didn't know a better man. I'm sure that's not all he said, Glenda. What other wise advice did he give you about our problem? She winced before answering. He said he understood both sides of our situation, and although he was your best friend for most of your life, you were not the one who was dying. He said that special concessions should be made for those who will soon leave this world. His advice makes sense. I agree with him, I said. And what, dear wife, was his advice? I asked sarcastically. She frowned before speaking. He said it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. You won't get anything from me. I exploded and walked out. If Bob and Teresa weren't a complete story for me before, they certainly are now. The friendship train has left the depot and will never return. I will try to limit all contact with Bob at work to a purely professional level. We work in different departments, so this shouldn't be a big problem. Later in the evening, Glenda gradually rekindled my desire and used it to have me again. She seemed to enjoy the power she had over me, as if she had won some kind of competition. Honestly, I had nothing against having an intimate with her as long as she hadn't crossed that line, and I was sure she hadn't done that yet. Hank, dear, there's something I want to say. Before you go to work tonight at 9 o'clock, I will go to Bob and Teresa's house. He and I will leave from there. He told me that he has tried many times to talk to you to clear your doubts, but you refuse to talk to him about anything other than work matters. He also said you don't answer his personal calls and messages. Teresa said you don't answer her anymore either. I'll be back here on Sunday afternoon, and I want to make love with you. I'm telling you this now because I want you to come home right after work. Fine, I said, though my world was crumbling before my eyes. Everything I knew about my life before will change after tomorrow. She seemed determined to go all the way. Glenda, you know I love you, but I don't love you enough to ever forgive you for cheating on me. And yes, I call it cheating because I don't approve of it and I don't want you to do it. If you sleep with Bob or any man other than me this weekend, I won't be here when you get back. I will never speak to Bob or Teresa again or have anything to do with our godchildren. The betrayal of all three of you is worse than you can imagine. If you sleep with him, I will never touch you again, I said sadly. Her eyes filled with tears at such strong words of resistance, but Bob and Teresa convinced her that I would humble myself and forgive her later. It was unthinkable to her that I would not be there for her when she left this world. You will be absolutely sure of who I love and who I need in my life, you. But I also need this. I am sorry that you cannot consider my feelings this time and fulfill my last request. She came over to kiss me goodbye as if it were a normal morning. I dodged and quickly got out. I heard her crying as I was leaving the house. My only hope was that she would change her mind before it was too late. When I returned home for lunch, I needed to know if she had already packed her suitcase and hid it under the bed. It contained underwear that was probably new because she never wore it for me. Perhaps this was her way of separating me and Bob. It was clear that she had made her decision. Now I needed to accept mine. Before returning to work, I sent her a short message from my phone. I've been asked to work late tonight on a special project. Sorry, I'm not sure when I'll return home. I beg you to change your mind about traveling with him. Then I immediately left the phone lying open on the kitchen table. I wasn't going to be home that evening for her planned romantic evening. I knew that for sure. I wanted to give her time to think and maybe change her mind. Bob eventually snuck up on me at work when my guard was down. Hank, you've got to get off your high horse, buddy. Think about Glenda and not yourself this time. This is her last request. I can't deny her this. Don't you understand? What I see is the traitorous person who used to be my best friend telling me he's going to sleep with my wife to make her happy. I can't stop you two from ruining my marriage, but you have to understand that your actions will have consequences. If you touch Glenda, then you, Teresa, and my 3 godsons will die to me forever. This will end my marriage and destroy our relationship. I think you'll be Glenda's lover from then on because I'll never touch her again after your nasty 5th place is with her. Hank, this doesn't sound like you. You are better than this. To say such things, you don't mean any of those words. You've forgotten that I know you better than you know yourself. I don't care what you think you know. I meant every word. Now get out of my office, or do you want to explain to your boss why you are wasting my time? Bob knew my mood and that there was no point in trying to reason with me in my current state. He needed to let me cool down. Bob hoped that Glenda's intimate affection that evening would soften the situation between us and lead to a better outcome. I was furious and almost shaking with anger. There were no words that could change my mind. It's obvious that Bob and Teresa value Glenda's friendship more than mine. I'm usually a very easygoing person, but some boundaries shouldn't be crossed. I left work 5 minutes early so Bob wouldn't catch me again and went straight to the gym. I had a subscription that I hardly used but decided to use it today. I didn't want to be too tired the next day, but I needed to take my anger out on the machines. While mindlessly doing the exercises, I was overcome with a range of emotions: deep loss, rage, helplessness, and loss again. I even shed a few tears but tried not to cry in front of other visitors. I left the gym at 7:30 after showering. It was a kind of therapy, but it didn't solve my problems. I went to Harper's restaurant, which Glenda and I loved to visit on special occasions. I remembered our many conversations and laughs that we shared there. It was a bittersweet experience as I considered my options. I wondered if I was stubborn enough to follow through on the threats I had made in recent conversations with Glenda. Are these principles on which I am willing to die? We had 25 wonderful years before all this happened. I never would have imagined that I would face this challenge with her. I considered beating Bob, but what would that do for Glenda? He knows how I feel and what I will do, and yet he intends to go for it even if I threaten his life to keep him away from her. She has already admitted that she could have come to that same Rubicon at some point in the future, even if she hadn't gotten cancer. When her husband wasn't home that evening, Glenda became very concerned when she saw his cell phone on the kitchen table. She didn't know when he left, but guessed it might have been midday when he texted her saying he'd be working late. "Hi Bob, this is Glenda. I know it's you, stupid. I'll recognize your sweet voice anywhere. How are things at home tonight with Hank? I hope it's calm." Bob asked. "That's exactly what I'm calling about. Do you know a reason why Hank might be working late today? He texted me at noon that he would be working late into the night on a special project. I can't imagine what Hank is talking about. I myself left work a little later today, getting some things done, and the parking lot was empty. Hank's car was gone when I left. Even though we don't work in the same department, I would be aware of any special projects or overtime. Have you tried to call him?" "That's exactly the problem, Bob. I tried as soon as I got home to find out when he was coming, but his damn cell phone was ringing on the kitchen table. So I can't contact him without his number. Unless, as you say, he's not at work. Didn't you tell me that you were going to have a very special night of love with him?" "Exactly. I made this clear to him this morning. So the only conclusion I can come to is that he is avoiding me. What should I do, Bob?" "Glenda, I know Hank. He's just playing a child's game, trying to sabotage your plans. If he deliberately decides to skip tonight's night of love with you, then he is a fool. He doesn't understand how lucky he is to have you. After your death, he will regret every moment he could have spent in your loving arms. Hank is a good man, my best friend in the world, but sometimes even good people do stupid things. You know what you want, you know you deserve it, and he's trying to ruin your holiday. Listen, honey, if you want to cancel, I understand." "No, Bob, I won't talk about it. Damn it, I've already suffered too much grief from him over this to cancel at the last minute." "You're right, Bob. If he misses this evening, then it is his loss. This will allow me to save more energy to spend time with you this weekend. You have no idea how much I'm looking forward to this. I can't thank you and Teresa enough. This is the attitude, Glenda. I hope Hank comes to his senses and has a magical time with you. Thank you, Bob. I feel much better. I'll wait until 9 o'clock for him, but I still plan to leave around then. I'll be with you shortly after that. Nothing will make me happier. Glenda, I promise to do my best this weekend. I hope this will be the experience you are looking for. I'm sure it will be. So, see you soon, Bob. Bye. As I pondered in the restaurant, I considered all my options. I came to the conclusion that if she left with Bob, I would never touch her again. She deliberately breaks her marriage vows. No one seduces or deceives her. This is a conscious decision that she makes in her right mind. Besides, this is a triple betrayal. In addition to losing my wife, I'm losing 2 of my best friends at the same time. They are both complicit in Glenda's betrayal. I would never do to Bob what he is doing to me and my marriage, even if Teresa urged me to. If the circumstances were the other way around, these 3 are dead to me. Divorce. I could have formally filed for divorce to make a declaration, but it would have been an extremely costly petition because she would have died before a judgment could be reached. There's no point in throwing money away. I would never have thought that she would cheat on me before this. Now that I can no longer trust her, I need to take steps to protect my finances. Who knows what she'll do next? I got home at 9:30 that night, and she wasn't there. She should be with Bob. I have never felt sadder and more alone in my life. The pain of the loss was unbearable, but my plans had to be carried out. I found a sealed envelope on the kitchen table with my name on it. It was on Glenda's phone, apparently because she didn't want to be disturbed this weekend. I decided not to touch the envelope and left it unopened. When I checked my messages on my phone, I saw that she had called and texted me earlier, worried about my absence. She swore that she would make it up to me after she returned, repeating that she needed it and swearing that she loved me and only me. Such words found no response. I deleted them all. The first thing I did was move all my clothes and belongings from the master bedroom to the guest room. I made sure that I left no trace that I had ever been in that bedroom. I then found our wedding album and cut out my images from all the photos, removing all traces of my presence. After that, I collected the album and left it on her bed, the bed that used to be ours. I called my brother and asked if I could spend a few nights with his family. He has a spare bedroom in the basement and instantly invited me to stay as long as I wanted. I took 1 Ambien to help me sleep. Medicines can sometimes work wonders. I was woken up by the doorbell at 9:15 a.m. I put on my robe and walked to the front door. "What are you doing here, Teresa?" I thought I explained everything clearly to Bob yesterday. "Good morning, Hank." "I could use our key, you know," Teresa replied. "We've had spare keys to each other's houses for a long time. Can I come in?" She was right, I had forgotten about it. I would have liked to change the locks, but then I realized that Glenda would just give Teresa a new one, so I gave up on that idea. "Whatever you need to say, you can say right here." "You haven't answered my question yet." "What are you doing here?" "Well, if someone answered their calls, I wouldn't have to come all the way here to see you," she said. "For the third and last time, Teresa, why are you here?" "I'm here for you, Hank, for 2 reasons. First, I want to know how you are feeling. Glenda told me you're upset about our agreement, so I'm here to help you deal with it. After all, you are one of my 2 best friends in the world. Help me deal with this." "How are you going to help me, Teresa?" "Whatever, Hank. I am here for you in whatever capacity you need. If you need a friend to talk to, it's me. If you need a housekeeper or a cook, that's me too. If you need an intimate partner to ease your pain and suffering, that's me too. The 3 of us agreed that you could be with me, just like they were together this weekend. Obviously, the 3 of you agreed to a lot of things that I strongly disagree with. Now, if you don't mind, I have a lot to do today. You came at a very inconvenient time. Please leave now and don't come back. If you use this key that I no longer want you to have, I will call the police and report an unexpected guest. I wish you a good life, Teresa," I said, slamming the door in her face. I watched from the window as she headed to her car. She was crying while talking on the phone to someone, probably Bob. I couldn't understand what made her cry. Perhaps he or Glenda wanted to know about my emotional state. I tried to tell Teresa as little as possible but made it clear how unhappy I was with the situation. She sat in the front seat of her car for about 5 minutes, watching the house as if she wasn't sure that leaving me like this was the right decision. Finally, she left. After my cereal breakfast, I went to a big box store and bought a pair of identical locks for the exterior doors. I installed one on the guest bedroom door and the other on the hallway bathroom door. Since I had the only keys, I felt comfortable expecting privacy. I then switched to a new phone plan so Glenda wouldn't have access to it. I paid an additional fee to change the number. No one could contact me unless I gave them my new number. As a final small gesture, I took off my wedding ring and held it in a vise in the workshop. It would no longer fit on a finger without some serious work by a jeweler. I left this symbolic gesture on Glenda's phone on the kitchen table. I packed a few things and went to visit my brother and his family for Sunday lunch at a nice family restaurant. It was the least I could do since they were providing me with a refuge from the drama for a few days. Glenda said she would be back on Sunday afternoon. I wanted to make sure I left before she returned. We had a great time with my brother's family. When Glenda returned home Sunday afternoon after a weekend with Bob, she expected to find a depressed husband whom she could comfort with her body until the sting of his absence faded. She didn't like finding that he was gone. How could she restore what they had if he wasn't around? She thought he might be out on business until she went into the bedroom to unpack her things. She noticed the wedding album on the bed and began to sob loudly when she saw that he had ruined it by cutting himself out of all the photographs. She realized that all his clothes were also gone. Had he really moved out? She saw the unopened letter she had left for him lying on the bed. Calling Hank to find out what was going on, she heard the familiar ringing tone and a message that the number was no longer in service. Everything was getting worse every second. This was not the reaction Bob had promised her. He assured her that Hank couldn't live without her. After checking the rest of the house, she noticed a new lock on the guest bedroom door. She felt relieved, thinking that perhaps he had not left completely but was simply staging a small protest by moving to another room. Not knowing who to call first, Glenda called Teresa to see if Hank had mentioned anything about his plans when she visited him on Saturday morning. No, Glenda, when I called Bob that morning, I told him every word Hank said, which was very little. I have to admit it hurt when Hank rejected me so harshly, Teresa said. What's happening? Glenda asked. Glenda told her everything she had discovered upon her return. Bob and Teresa listened to her on speakerphone. Bob intervened. But didn't you leave Hank a letter explaining that you were going to hand in your resignation in 2 weeks and spend the rest of the time pleasing him? Yes, Bob, I wrote him this letter as you suggested, but he didn't open it or read it. He doesn't know what is written there. It's still here, sealed, she replied, crying. I assure you, there is nothing to worry about, Glenda. Apparently, he moved his things into the guest bedroom for a day or two just to get revenge. It's just a little pathetic prank, nothing more. He'll be back in your arms soon, I guarantee it. I hope you're right. Thanks for the support anyway, Glenda replied gratefully. Glenda then tried to call Hank's brother and parents. His parents didn't know anything, and his brother said he hadn't heard from him, which is what Hank had asked him to say. She decided it was her turn to be patient, just as Hank had to be patient during her absence over the weekend. But Hank's absence was especially painful. She had never felt such a disconnect with him before, and it was unbearable. She cried until she finally fell asleep alone in her bed for the first time in a long time. At 6:30 a.m. on Monday, I called work, leaving a voicemail for my boss that I was taking 2 personal days due to urgent family circumstances. I didn't want to meet Bob, and I also didn't want the 3 of them to be able to contact me at my work number. I decided to transfer some of the money in case she decided to spend it thoughtlessly. We had accumulated quite a bit of capital over 25 years of marriage, and I wanted to protect it. My confidence in her had disappeared. I transferred 2/3 of all our cash and investments into accounts owned only by me. Unless she specifically looked, she wouldn't notice the changes, as long as all the bills continued to be paid. This took most of the day. I was glad for the temporary respite from the drama but knew the storm would blow when I got home. On Tuesday morning, I went for a relaxing walk in the park and then had lunch at a nearby diner. Cinemas usually don't open until noon on weekdays, so I spent the day enjoying hassle-free entertainment. Tuesday evening brought more tension, knowing what awaited me when Glenda spoke. I promised myself that I would not participate in the screaming. I am grateful to my brother and his family for providing shelter and the opportunity to collect my thoughts and gain determination. On Wednesday morning, I returned to work. I did not explain the exact nature of the family situation to my boss, and he professionally did not ask any further questions. I really appreciated that about him. As soon as Bob heard about my return to work, he headed straight to my office. "Well, you finally showed up. Have you spoken to Glenda?" "She's going crazy worrying about you, you idiot," Bob stated, closing my office door upon entering. I ignored him, walked to the door, and opened it again to eliminate the possibility of a private conversation. When he tried to close it again, I left the office without acknowledging his presence or personal questions. He followed me a short distance, calling out to me as I walked to the men's room at the other end of the building. I remained adamant. I decided not to communicate with Teresa or Bob anymore. I was sure that Glenda would keep them informed of my every word, but they would receive no confirmation from me. I was also sure that Bob would inform Glenda of my arrival. She soon called me at work 4 times in a row. I put each of her calls on hold, where she listened to music until she gave up. When I left work at the end of the day, Bob said nothing but followed me to the restaurant. I didn't want my dinner to be ruined by a tense emotional conversation. He waited until I left and then followed me again. I saw him talking on the phone as I drove up to the house. I knew who he was talking to. Glenda would be waiting for me. As I pulled into the driveway, she ran out to meet me with her arms outstretched. I quickly grabbed my duffel bag and held it in front of me to maintain distance. As we entered the house, Glenda, crying, began, "Where have you been, Hank? Do you have any idea how worried I was? I didn't find a place for myself until you entered the house. Don't ever scare me like that again, do you hear? Perhaps I can imagine how worried you might have been. Were you as worried about me cheating with another woman as I was about you cheating with another man? I highly doubt it. After all, it would be cheating, wouldn't it? I hope your friend Teresa has convinced you that I didn't even let her into the house for a minute." Her facial expression showed that she understood my rude hint. I was proud of myself for not raising my voice. "Hank, I know you're upset, so we need to talk about this and put it behind us. You have no idea how much I want to hug you again tonight. I want you to know that I will beg you until you forgive me. I have a few questions before we continue." "Of course, Hank." "Ask. Did you sleep with Bob last weekend?" She nodded silently. "Bob said it was better not to give you details. He said it might make you too excited." "Oh, I see now. This piece of shit is in charge of our marriage. You've already told me everything I need to know. Good night, Glenda." I stood up, ready to leave the room. Okay, I will answer your questions. I promise." "Please sit back down," she begged. She nervously pulled herself together as I sat down, and she explained everything in detail about her time with Bob. "It's clear. Thanks for your candid answers. These images will never leave my head for the rest of my life because of what you allowed him to do to your body. I can no longer accept you as mine. You gave another man what I thought was mine. I hope you created unforgettable memories with him, Glenda, because the last man you made love to was not your husband. That piece of shit and his wife are no longer my friends. You can visit them as much as you like, but I don't want to see them in our house again. If they come, please let me know in advance so I can leave until they leave. No, it doesn't have to be like this. If you let me love you tonight, you will see," she sobbed in abrupt phrases. "Before you left for the weekend, I clearly told you what the consequences would be, but instead of believing me, your husband, you believed the words of this piece of shit. You trusted the wrong person. You made your choice, Glenda. I hope it was worth it. Stop calling him that terrible name. He is your best friend in the whole wide world. He was your best friend long before you met me. Now they are our best friends. You're just upset. I understand that. Bob told me you might need time to calm down. He's right about that. I think I'll settle down in about, say, 6 months." Her eyes went wide. 6 months? but I'll be gone in 6 months. Hank, you can't be serious. We need to get over this now. Give me a chance to help you get through this. I'm sorry, Glenda. I'm not in the mood to throw up after dinner. Intentional nausea is not on my agenda. Are you leaving me, Hank? Are you saying this is the end for us? She asked in a weak, high-pitched voice. I thought about this for a long time while you were with another man last weekend. As you know, I am not one to break my vows. Although you admitted that you did, I will be true to my vows until the day I die. I won't cheat on you like you cheated on me. I will continue to live in this house with you, but in different bedrooms. I will pay all our bills and do all the normal household chores. I'm not going anywhere. I won't leave you in sickness and in health, remember? But my vows don't require me to have a night with you or kiss you again. All I ask is that you don't invite that piece of shit and his wife back here again. If they come, kindly let me know in advance so that I can leave while they are not here. What have I done? I destroyed us. No, Hank, if what you say is true, it wasn't worth it. 1,000 weekends with him or anyone else aren't worth it. My only hope is that you will find it in your heart to forgive me before it is too late. I'm sorry, Hank. I'm sorry for what I did to us. The heart does not always listen to what the brain says. One more request, Glenda. Since you won't have an intimate with me again, if you sleep with this piece of shit or anyone else again, please don't do it in this house. Meet your lovers somewhere else, but don't bring them here. You can do it. I will never ask you about your personal life. Her face turned red with indignation. Listen to me carefully. This was an isolated event, do you understand me? This will never happen again. I want the last man I was with to be you. I swear to all that is holy that I will never be intimate with anyone but you again. I heard you say the same vow at our wedding. Forgive me if I doubt your words now. She began to sob uncontrollably. I went up to my bedroom, closed, and locked the door, leaving her sobbing over our lost intimacy on the couch. The next morning, I left for work, avoiding her. Mid-morning, this piece of crap burst into my office. I'm not leaving, Hank, until you talk to me. What you are doing to this wonderful woman is unforgivable. I'll talk to you as long as it takes to make you change your mind, Bob said. I picked up the phone and called my boss. Hi Denny, I have a problem I hope you can help with. Bob is in my office trying to distract me from work with personal questions. He's preventing me from performing my duties. Is there anything you can do to stop him from stalking me? I don't want to have anything to do with him. Thank you, Denny. I appreciate it. Are you serious? You can't talk to me one-on-one, so you're calling for backup? Bob asked. Something like that, I answered indifferently. When my office phone rang, I answered, Yes, sir, I will pass it on. This is for you. I handed Bob the phone. Hello, yes sir, that's right. Got it, sir. It won't happen again. Defeated, he handed the phone to me. This is not the end, Hank. I won't jeopardize my job by approaching you here again, but this is not the end. We have too much history for it to end like this. I continued to look at the papers on my desk, ignoring his tirade until he turned and walked out of the office. I was glad it happened now. He would be on a short leash. He knew I would report any further harassment at work, and he needed that space as much as I did. This was my consolation. If he contacted me outside of work, I'd address it then. Time was on my side. Doctors said Glenda had less than 2 good months left before she started to deteriorate. Although it would be difficult, I could endure 2 months of hell if I had to. I arrived home after work, having dinner at a family restaurant. One reason was to limit my time with Glenda by not letting her cook for me. Another reason was that she would leave soon, and I would have to handle the cooking myself. I decided to research decent places to eat at a fair price, which was not easy in the current economy. As expected, she prepared dinner for us. Hello, dear. I made your favorite. I hope you're hungry. I noticed you were a little late, but I kept the food warm for us. Sit down, I'll serve you. Sorry, but I already had dinner. That's why I stayed late. Like you said, you'll be gone soon, so I'm checking out places to eat in town so I can be prepared for your departure. Sorry, I don't want you to waste your time, energy, and products on me. I should have told you that I will be eating out from now on. This should ease your worries a little by not having to worry about me anymore. You an idiot, are you taking this from me too? You made it clear that I was an intimate taboo for you, but I was hoping you would be reasonable and allow me to continue cooking for you. Do I mean nothing to you anymore? This is true. I can't say the words you want to hear, Glenda. You say you regret sleeping with another man. I'm sorry, but there are consequences for this. Neither of us is happy with the situation, but it is what it is. I'm going to my room. She started crying again. Hank, you don't have to hide in your room all the time. Can you even watch TV here? I don't have the plague. I can't give you cancer. Please don't push me away completely. I'll think about it under 2 conditions, I suggested. Name them, she replied. First of all, no mention of that weekend and what it cost us. I don't want to be besieged by attempts to make me listen to your point of view. And second, don't ever mention Bob or his wife. If you ever decide to meet them, don't tell me about it before or after. Agree? She looked sad that I had taken such a hard line against 2 people she loved almost as much as she loved me. Agree. To her credit, she never asked for the remote. Whatever I wanted to watch, we watched. Perhaps she felt that at least with this she could please me a little. Our conversations were limited to work, politics, family, or everyday issues. She kept her word and did not bring up controversial topics, although I knew they were simmering beneath the surface. If she talked to my former friends on the phone, she did it without me hearing. She knew they were one of my biggest triggers, and we had a bit of a status quo. Late at night, every night, I heard her crying herself to sleep alone in her bedroom. Honestly, I don't think she regretted her time with him. The only thing she regretted, in my opinion, was the consequences. Then she pulled off a little trick. On Saturday morning, she asked if she could go to breakfast and lunch with me since I no longer allowed her to cook my food. I stopped this by making myself a bowl of milk and cereal for breakfast before going outside to mow the lawn. I was careful enough to wash and dry my dishes. Cleaning outside was usually my task, and I continued to do it. I called the local pizzeria that also made sandwiches and asked them to deliver the sandwich to my home so I could continue working on servicing the car. She was washing clothes and asked me to throw my dirty clothes into the general wash so they could wash everything together. I politely declined, saying that I didn't have much stuff and could handle it myself. She cried again and walked away. Who would have thought that a woman would cry at the thought of her husband washing his own clothes? Of course, since my bedroom was locked, she couldn't change my sheets or make my bed. I was glad that I had tasks that occupied my time, leaving me less time for my own painful experiences. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I heard some noise in the house. Our children, Alan and our daughter-in-law Brenda, along with Elise and our son-in-law Edward, were in the kitchen chatting happily with their mother. I went to say hello and asked the reason for their visit. It was an unexpected visit. Alan spoke on behalf of the group. "Hi Dad, glad to see you too," he said, hugging me. We've all been in closer contact with Mom since her diagnosis. She says she doesn't have many good days left, so we decided to bring burgers and hot dogs and have an old-fashioned picnic. Don't worry, you and Mom don't have to lift a finger. We know what to do and how to do it, and the 4 of us will take care of everything, including cleaning. If you can believe that after our childhoods, he joked. Don't get me wrong, I love when the kids come to visit, but this was not a random event. I'm sure Glenda was behind this supposed altruistic incident. As they say, all's fair in love and war. We weren't quite at war, but close enough that she would use the children against me, as I assumed she would. An hour later, I was informed that the grill had been thoroughly cleaned and was ready for use. The girls had chopped and mixed the ingredients for the salad, the meat was in the refrigerator, and everything seemed to be ready. Then Glenda came up to me. "Hank, honey, the kids asked for homemade ice cream. As you know, the recipe I'm using requires cooking, and I don't have all the ingredients. I'll just drop by the supermarket and buy the missing items. I'll be back very quickly," she said cheerfully. As soon as her car left the garage, I felt surrounded by 4 interrogators from the Spanish Inquisition. This time, my daughter Elise took the initiative. "Daddy, can I talk to you for a few minutes?" she asked very politely. "Of course, honey. My door is always open to all of you," I replied. She smiled sweetly and began, "Daddy, as you know, Mom and I talk often. It's easier for her to share girl talk with me than with Alan. First, the 4 of us want you to know that we all love you. We love Mom too, and that's why we want to talk to you and find out your point of view. Everyone in this room wants Mom to be better until she leaves. You know better than us that she doesn't have much time left, so we want her to make the most of it. Daddy, we know what Mommy did with Uncle Bob that weekend. She confessed to me when you were away for a couple of days. Like you, we were surprised at first, but after thinking a little, we better understand and appreciate her position. We understand why this was difficult for you to deal with at first, but you've had time to come to terms with it. She swears it will never happen again, and we believe her. It was just one of her wishes that she wanted to fulfill before she died. Is it so difficult to understand and forgive? She says you haven't touched her since that weekend. She also says that you cut Uncle Bob and Aunt Teresa out of your life. Dad, they have always been your best friends. Can't you understand that Uncle Bob was just granting a dying woman's wish? You could have been with Aunt Teresa that weekend in exchange, but you just exploded like dynamite. So you 4 think I should just forgive and forget, huh? I asked. They all nodded. I took inventory of my sad thoughts as I stood before the only ones left in the world that I loved more than my life. I had to be careful. I didn't want to argue and alienate them. Then an idea popped into my mind. Alan, you are my flesh and blood. You know that I would die for you without hesitation, right? Of course, Dad. You were always there. There is no doubt about it, he replied. And Brenda, as my son's wife, you know that I love you too, don't you? And that I would die for you if necessary, without even blinking, I asked her. Of course, Dad. And this love is mutual. All 4 of us love you just as much. Each of us would willingly sacrifice our lives to save yours or your mother's. That's why we're here, because we all love you so much, Brenda assured me. I'm so glad to hear that, Brenda. I believe you. That makes it much easier for me to ask the next question. As you know, I'm not getting any younger, and as a result of your mother's actions, I've been thinking a lot about bucket lists, even my own. So, Alan, are you willing to give me Brenda for the weekend to make one of my wishes come true? I think if she and I spend a weekend together like your mother and Bob, it will reassure me that you two believe in what you say and are willing to back up your words with actions. If you do this, perhaps I can forgive your mother. What are you, crazy? Alan exclaimed. Brenda blushed at the thought of this intimate proposal. No way in the world would I agree to this, Dad. Even if you were dying, I understand that my wife is not your blood relative, but that would still be incestuous in my opinion. I can't believe you even suggested that, he raged. Oh, you mean like Uncle Bob and your mom? I suggested, this makes sense in 4 minds, and let it sit for a minute before speaking again. Brenda, I owe you and my son an apology. I would never ask for something like that, even if I were dying. I asked this question just to make a point. Alan, you said you wouldn't agree to this even if I were dying, and I didn't agree either. It was easier for you to forgive your mother because you were not married to her. But think about it, Alan, if Brenda went with me and then came back to you, would you ever be able to look at her the same way again? Could you forgive her as easily as you asked me to forgive your mother? There was silence in the room for over a minute as both couples considered the rationality of my logic. Without a word, Alan nodded to Edward, and they shook hands. Then Elise hugged Brenda. I wasn't sure what was happening, but I hoped it wasn't another attack. Alan turned to me again. Dad, you're right. Thank you for still being a good father and teaching us another important life lesson. We only saw it from Mom's point of view. We hadn't looked at it from all angles, and you just opened our eyes. Thank you. However, we don't love Mom any less and still want her to be happy until she dies. However, we understand that she lost the right to ask this of you when she did what she did. We also understand how you feel about Uncle Bob and Aunt Teresa, and frankly, we completely agree with your feelings, at least about Uncle Bob. We're not taking sides in this, Dad. We are neutral. We love you both equally, but we won't put any more pressure on you about your mom. We promise. Mom just has to come to terms with the fact that she can't get everything she wants. We will still support her in whatever way we can, but we will not support her quest to force you to forgive her by using us as pawns. I swear, if I had a button-down shirt on, it would all fall off by now because I'm so proud of you all. I couldn't have asked for more. Thanks for understanding. I never insisted that any of you turn away from your mother, even for a moment. She will lean heavily on you when the end comes, and I know you will be there when she needs you most. I hugged them all one by one. I was so happy with how it turned out. Things could have been much worse. The rest of the evening went fine. Glenda was delighted with my positive attitude after returning from the store. The kids cooked their burgers and hot dogs to perfection, and the strawberry soft-serve ice cream for dessert was delicious. She didn't have time to talk to them since I was always around. After cleaning up and hugging and kissing Glenda, she headed over to talk to me. You seem to be in a good mood, Hank. It's wonderful to see you smiling so much this afternoon and evening. The children always cheer me up every time they come. How can I not smile when they are around? One bird told me they were going to talk to you while I was in the store. Well, the kids don't seem to be angry with you, so can I assume the conversation went well and they were able to convince you to see things my way from your side? When they talked to me, they said that they loved us both equally and that they weren't taking sides. This seemed very fair to me. You and I raised these kids well, didn't we? For some reason, my little bird led me to believe that you would either accept my point of view or be left alone in the cold. I don't know anything about this, Glenda. You might want to check your bird again. Meanwhile, I'm going to take a shower and change clothes. We both had a busy day. I left her in thought as I headed to the shower. I knew she would contact Elise while I was showering. I wondered what her mood would be after their conversation. You're just a stubborn jerk who can't get over your fragile ego, Glenda said to me when I entered the living room. Well, I guess it's good that you found this out about me now, before you spend the rest of your life being around that fragile, selfish jerk, I replied. I'm sure that piece of work, your friend, will exceed all your expectations in a man since I'm obviously not worthy of you. She ignored my taunt and continued her attack. Really? Did you ask Brenda to sleep with you? You might want to check with your birdie before you make things worse. I took a moment to respond. After the children heard my point of view, they said they were neutral. I have never and will never be intimate with Brenda. I advise you to ask Brenda for confirmation since you doubt my word. She was throwing a fit because using children as weapons didn't go the way she planned. I was sure Elise had told her exactly the facts of our little encounter. She was just trying to piss me off. I sat down and started changing channels. She rushed to her bedroom and slammed the door. With any luck, she would stay there all night. Another week of our Mexican standoff had passed. I could see that she was getting more and more frustrated every day because of my rebellion, but we coexisted more or less peacefully in the house. We still didn't eat together. I still washed all my clothes and dishes every time I cooked something for myself. She went out the following Saturday evening and did not return until 11 p.m. I assumed she met the goat and his wife, but she never mentioned them, and I didn't ask. I think my lack of interest angered her even more. The next Monday morning, the big boss, Graylin Zadu, was waiting for me in my office. He was the president of the company, but we rarely met. Dennis was my immediate superior, and even he admitted that he didn't have access to the big boss. Good morning, sir. What do I owe the honor? I asked as respectfully as possible. It's Hank, right? Hank Greenlee? Yes, sir. At your service. Hank, I've heard good things about you through the grapevine. Dennis speaks highly of the quality of your work through his boss, who reports to me. I try to keep my finger on the pulse of the company and just want you to know that you are a valued employee. Thank you, sir. It means a lot to hear that, especially from senior management. Yes, but I have another question that I would like to discuss with you. Of course, sir. Please continue. Hank, do you know Brian McFadden? I know of Brian McFadden, sir. That's my father-in-law's name, right? Well, you're right about the connection. Your father-in-law is my golf partner almost every weekend. We have known each other for many years. He keeps me on my toes on the golf course. He never mentioned that you were his brother-in-law and worked here until recently. He said he wanted you to succeed on your own, and you did. I respect that about both of you. However, Brian brought to my attention something that he thought was worth discussing. He said that you and his daughter are going through a bit of a disagreement. He also mentioned that his daughter has terminal cancer and doesn't have long to live. Is this true? Yes, sir, it is. He interrupted me. As a father, Brian wants nothing more than for his daughter to be as happy as possible in her final weeks of life. As a father, you probably understand his feelings. Anyway, he asked me to see how you were doing. Sometimes men have to swallow a bitter pill with their wives. It happens to all of us. I'm sure you're the kind of man who takes good care of his wife. I would be sad to hear from Brian that you are not coping with your responsibilities at home. You do realize that performance reviews include a person's character as well as their job skills, right? I was stunned. My father-in-law threw me under the bus for his daughter. I guess I couldn't blame him, but I couldn't tolerate intimidation and blackmail in the workplace. I didn't want to upset my director anymore, so I answered, "Of course, sir. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll take care of it." Make sure you take care, son. I don't want to discuss this with you a second time. I assure you, sir, after today, you will have no reason or need to continue this conversation. Thank you for your timely advice. My boss, Graylin Zadu, left my small office, satisfied that he had solved his good friend's problem by taking the bull by the horns. After he was out of sight and heading toward the elevator leading to his office, I typed my formal resignation letter onto the office computer, effective immediately, and printed it out. I gathered all my personal belongings, which easily fit into a small cardboard box, and took them to the car. Then I went to the HR department, handed them my resignation letter, confirmed it in person, turned in my badge, and left the office building for the last time. This tactical move solved two problems, isolating me from the interfering friend and removing my father-in-law's influence on the correction of my behavior towards his daughter. But it also created another problem. I was now unemployed. Moreover, I would not be able to use my former employer as a reference because I had not served my notice. It looks like I'll have a lot of time to plan my next steps. Since it was still early, I went home and spent the day working on projects around the house. Glenda arrived home after work at her usual time. You came back before me today. How did this happen, dear? I looked at her with contempt, as usual, when she used pet names. Well, if you must know, I quit my job today. What are you doing? She exclaimed. Yes, it seems your father was against me, so I had no other choice, I stated calmly. My father? How do you suppose my father made you quit? Since you asked, I learned today that your father regularly plays golf with the CEO of my company, Graylin Zadu. It turns out Mr. Zadu was in my office first thing this morning, expressing his displeasure that your father was complaining to him on the golf course about how he didn't approve of the way I was treating you. Given your situation, Mr. Zadu made it clear that if I don't fix the situation at home with you to your father's satisfaction, my future job could be in jeopardy. He threatened me with negative performance reviews that would affect my ability to climb the corporate ladder or even lead to my demotion. As you know, I don't like threats. Even if I were to become your dream husband again, the damage has already been done. I was slandered in the eyes of the general director of our company. There's no chance I can come back from this, so I handed in my resignation, and here I am. How dare you blame my father for losing his job? You're just a loser, Hank. Why don't you just admit it? You gave up on me, you gave up on our marriage, and you gave up on your job. And now you want to blame my father for your failures? He's better than you'll ever be, she raged. It's clear my mistake. I apologize for the truth. Don't worry, I won't make that mistake again. Let me think, since I didn't quit my job because of what your father said to my boss, how about this reason? My big toe hurt today, so I quit. How about that? Is that the best reason in your opinion? Why do you have to be so stubborn about everything? Why can't you forgive me and let us live a normal, happy life again before it's too late? Why do you even want to be with someone as stubborn as me? It's pointless in your opinion. That piece of ex-friend is a much better friend than me. Why don't you move in with him and enjoy the time you have left? He was the last person you had a night with. I'm sure he'll volunteer to call you again. Why stay here with me if I'm such a loser? Because I love you and only you, Hank. After all is said and done, you are the only man I have ever truly loved. You're just too blind to see it, she said with disappointment. We were both trapped, she in her declared love for me, and I in my stubborn refusal to accept her betrayal. We remained at a dead end. I'll go eat. I'll be back in a while. Why don't you call your dad while I'm gone and see if he can find someone to beat me up for you? I said, dripping with sarcasm. I thought she had run out of tears, but I was wrong. I left the house alone to avoid further drama and ate out in peace. Apparently, she actually called her father while I was away and was waiting for me to return. Sorry, Hank. I didn't know that my father would use his friendship with your boss to try to blackmail or intimidate you. As much as I love my father and appreciate what he tried to do, interfering with someone's career is wrong. He had good intentions, but I take full responsibility for not telling him the whole truth about my role in our problems. I thought so. Look, I understand why your father tried to use his influence to help you. You know that I would do everything in my power to help our children. I understand it, but I thought he was better than that. Now I have learned that he did not know the whole truth. Well, I'm going to fix it if I can, and Dad will help me, unless he doesn't want to see me anymore. What do you mean, Glenda? How can you fix anything in my career? I've made a decision. Tomorrow morning, I will submit my resignation from my job. I don't have to work off my notice because I'll never need to work again. Dad and I will join our efforts with yours to help you find a better job than the one you had. It's our fault that you were put in an awkward position, so it's our responsibility to make it right. Dad knows a lot of people besides your boss. He will start making contacts, and so will I. We will do our best to find you the perfect job and fix the situation. Does this suit you? This was unexpected. I was expecting another attack, but this was a surprise. I had no idea what my options were, but I was happy to accept help from both of them. Thank you. I convinced my dad to take next week off to help us. I'll either find you a new job or die trying, she joked. True to his word, Brian was at our house early the next morning. He went with Glenda to work, where she handed in her resignation. She planned to leave in the coming weeks anyway and was glad to avoid the sorry you're dying farewell party they would have thrown when she left. When they returned, our house became a job search center. That week, all three of us constantly called all known business contacts and acquaintances. Getting and arranging interviews was easy, but we wanted every interview I went to be truly high quality and promising, not just a gamble. The economy was shrinking at the time, and well-paying jobs were rare. I must have had a dozen interviews that week while they kept up the pressure to help me find the right place. I had never seen Glenda so dedicated to a task. She had an unyielding determination to keep her word to me that she had never demonstrated before. Productive help came from the most unexpected source. Brian, swallowing his pride, contacted Graylin Zadu, explaining that he had misunderstood his daughter's problem and had rushed to put pressure on me. He apologized for his role in the loss of a valuable employee, explaining that returning to my old job was not an option. Graylin regretted my loss and scolded his golf partner for jumping to conclusions. In the next breath, he asked for an hour to make a few calls to see what he could do for me. We were stunned when 45 minutes later we received a call from Wellington Enterprises Incorporated. They needed a new purchasing manager. It is a custom manufacturing company that brings the inventions of new inventors to life. Inventors to life, investors support new product ideas, and Wellington brings them to life, creating custom manufacturing for various products. It's not an easy task, but they have found their niche. We were told that most products did not become popular with the public, but those that did made all other attempts worthwhile. When I showed up for the interview the next day, it seemed my presence was just a formality. 3 previous purchasing managers had been fired for bribery or embezzlement. It appeared that the 2 qualities they were looking for in the position were honesty and integrity. Graylin Zadu's positive recommendation was obviously of great importance. My starting salary would be 35% higher than my previous salary. Mr. Zotter really turned out to be a decent person. I was supposed to start my new career 3 weeks after the complete purging of the staff of unscrupulous employees. I humbly thanked Brian and Glenda for their support and help in securing this golden opportunity. They both said it was the least they could do, given their involvement in the loss of my previous job. Brian and I were back to where we were before. We had a good relationship. He appreciated that. Before the weekend, I had always been a great husband to his daughter. He also noted that many men would have left their wives under similar circumstances, which would have left Glenda without a partner in her final days. He teared up as he shook my hand, expressing his restored respect for the man he knew in me. It seemed like Glenda was stubbornly holding on to see me get a new job. The next day, she fell down in pain and became severely jaundiced. I took her to the hospital, where we were told this was a normal progression of cancer. Her oncologist sent her home with a slew of medications, including painkillers, to ease her symptoms and manage her discomfort. When this became known, she had many visitors who seemed to want to make one last visit while they still could. I did my best to accommodate everyone and try to organize the visits in an orderly manner, rather than having a large group come together at once. One afternoon, Glenda told me that Bob and Teresa wanted to visit her, along with their children Charlene, Joe, and Evelyn. I told her I understood and would arrange the visit. She knew what that meant. I called Elise, told her I had a few things to take care of, which was true, and asked her to arrange the visit and let me know when everyone was leaving. She said she would take care of it and let me know when it was done. My daughter is very perceptive. Everything went smoothly, and I avoided any negative interactions. This visit opened Elise's eyes. From that day on, our children began to spend much more time with her, knowing that her time was dwindling. After 2 weeks, Glenda was so weak that she could no longer get out of bed. Insurance allowed me to hire a nurse during the day, and I took care of her in the evenings when I returned from my new job. She became fragile and lost a lot of weight. She had a special machine to deliver medication to control the pain. All she had to do was press a button, and the machine would dispense a dose to relieve her discomfort. She couldn't talk on the phone anymore, so I turned it off and put it away. Everything now passed through me. I was surprised to receive a call from Teresa, who wanted to know about Glenda's condition and express her concern that she could not reach her by phone. After I explained the situation, she asked permission to visit her again. I told her I didn't think it would be convenient or a good idea. She seemed upset but didn't insist. The children and their spouses worked in shifts to help me care for her and give me respite from constant care. It was very valuable as her condition rapidly deteriorated. I offered to place her in hospice care, but she adamantly refused, stating that she wanted to die at home, surrounded by loved ones, rather than in a room with strangers. No matter how painful it was for me, I complied with her request. Glenda fell into a sleep from which she could not wake up. I compared it to being in a coma, realizing that its time was coming to an end. One of the 4 children was always nearby, day and night, ready to call the others if anything significant happened. I sat in her room late at night, getting ready to go to bed myself. Suddenly, Glenda sat up straight on the bed. She had been almost catatonic for almost 2 weeks, and now she was sitting on her own. She had a glow about her and the sweetest smile I had ever seen on her face. Then she spoke. "I'm sorry I hurt you, Hank. Please forgive me. I love you with all my heart." I immediately ran up to her, kissed her, and said, "Of course I forgive you, Glenda. I love you too." She quietly lay back down and fell asleep again. I felt that this was it and called all the children. They kept vigil with me while I held her hand. For hours later, she took her last breath. We all cried and hugged, clinging to life and the love we all felt for each other, the love she left us as a legacy. I was exhausted while organizing everything. Alan and Elise were a huge help with everything. Glenda made it easy for us by planning almost every detail in advance. She was cremated, and we held a memorial service in a nearby chapel. Elise nervously told me that her mother had asked Bob to speak at the service. After the minister's sermon, Elise thought it was too much to ask of me. I was stunned and did not know she had made such arrangements without my knowledge. However, the children begged me to fulfill her wishes even after her death. I agreed for their sake. The service had an hour before it began for the family to gather, support each other, and receive guests. I wasn't surprised when Charlene, Joe, and Evelyn hugged me. They were our godchildren and had done nothing wrong. They had nothing to do with their parents' actions or my wife. I hugged them back, tearing up, realizing how much I still loved them. Even though they weren't my blood relatives, they were still family. Bob and Teresa kept their distance from me but talked to everyone else. Brian held up better than I expected. He made it clear that he didn't want any distance between us, and I assured him that I felt the same way. During the memorial service, Brenda, Alan's wife, sat to my left in the front row, holding my hand. Elise was on my right, holding my other hand. God, how I loved my children and appreciated the love Glenda had instilled in them for the family. The priest was kind and reassuring, delivering an inspiring sermon about hope and deliverance. The music consisted of 3 compositions that were close to Glenda's heart. Finally, Bob took the stage. Brenda and Elise squeezed my hands tightly, assuring me that they were there to support me. Bob said that Glenda had asked him to read a letter she wrote, which she must have given him the last time they visited her when Elise was there. The letter was encouraging, advising everyone to use their time as if it were their last day. Without directly mentioning what she had done to Bob, she encouraged everyone to forgive each other as it is a good deed. She ended by encouraging everyone to keep in touch with me and the children and try to introduce me to quality women so that I could continue to live a full and fruitful life. Everyone, including me, laughed. It was typical Glenda. When Bob finished, he decided to add his own remarks. I've known Hank longer than anyone else in this room. His dear late wife begged us all to forgive each other. I stand before you admitting that I did what could be considered wrong for all the right reasons. Hank here refuses to forgive me. We've been best friends since junior high, but he can't find it in his heart to forgive me for this one offense. As Bob continued speaking, Alan stood up and signaled to the priest, who nodded his head. The microphone Bob was using was immediately turned off. Brenda stood next to her husband as Ace and Edward pulled me along with them. Alan led the 5 of us out of the main chapel and into the lobby. As we started to leave, Teresa, Charlene, Joe, and Evelyn also stood up in protest and left with us. Bob was stunned to see his own family abandon him. Alan explained, Charlene told me that she overheard her dad mention that he might call you on stage. I have already agreed with the priest to turn off the microphone if he does this. I spoke sternly to him when he arrived to make sure he didn't say anything inappropriate, and he swore he only wanted to say what Mom wanted him to say on her behalf. I didn't expect his family to go with us. I looked at Charlene, who said, I love my dad and I love all of you too. What he said was simply wrong. We know the story, Uncle Hank. We know what they did was wrong, and we stand with you today. You are family too. Sorry we've been sidelined since that weekend. I love you all even more now than before. You showed me your true colors, and I like them. But you, Teresa, Hank, I'm so sorry for my role in all of this. All I can do is offer my deepest apologies along with my condolences. What my husband did was wrong, and I do not support him in publicly attacking you. I'm endlessly confused. Please don't let his delusions ruin your happiness. You have such a wonderful family that supports you. Rejoice in them, she urged. Teresa hugged me and held me as if her life depended on it, but she was still married to my enemy and had made the grave mistake of supporting him and Glenda on their weekend getaway. I had no idea if I would ever get over it. Moments later, the doors opened, and the crowd began to file out of the chapel. Everyone who passed by us expressed their sincere condolences. I asked the children, including Charlene, Joe, and Evelyn, to pick up all the flowers that were provided for the service. They promised to take care of it and thanked me. As I prepared to head home, Charlene asked if she could accompany me. Alan and Elise nodded in approval as she took my hand and led me to my car. She took us to my house, where she cooked me a wonderful dinner from all the many dishes that friends had left for us. She cleaned the kitchen perfectly and kept me company until dinner. When my children arrived, Charlene hugged me tightly again, told me she loved me, and asked me not to become a stranger. Charlene was a good person and had been raised well. Over the next couple of weeks, Bob tried to reconcile several times, but I rejected all his attempts. His children joined mine twice during the summer at various house parties and invited me to family barbecues. Bob or Teresa were never mentioned. Contacts decreased sharply after this, as interactions became less frequent. Everyone has their own life, and I wasn't sad about it. I threw myself into my work, focusing on efficiently acquiring all the necessary parts and components on time and at a reasonable price. I had a team of 7 people, 3 of whom were newly hired. I led this core group and was proud of how smoothly our operations ran. Everyone did their jobs, and I considered them my work family. It had been just over a year since Glenda's death when I received a cryptic message from Alan asking me to meet him at the luxurious Chez Roberto restaurant on Saturday evening at 8, at his expense. He indicated that he was working on a special project and wanted me to meet his contact there. He asked me to dress decently in a suit. I wondered what special project he was working on. Had he thought about changing careers? I was glad that he wanted to include me in this aspect of his life. I took my best suit to the dry cleaner to be ready to meet this businessman. Chez Roberto is a high-end restaurant frequented by influential businessmen or couples for special occasions. It is quite expensive but has an impeccable reputation for creating the most exquisite snacks and dishes. I had never been to Chez Roberto before this evening. Alan instructed me to give my name to the concierge upon arrival. He quickly acknowledged the reservation and asked me to follow the head waiter to my table. As we walked through the restaurant, I could feel the romance in the air as I watched the beautiful couples exchanging glances of love and adoration. There were also several tables occupied by businessmen, which I thought I was heading towards. As I approached, I noticed a woman from the back dressed in an elegant dress, sitting alone at a table. She looked very elegant from my point of view, and I thought some man was very lucky. Just when I thought we were going to pass her table, the head waiter stopped and motioned for me to take my seat. "There must be a mistake, sir," I suggested. "There is no mistake, I assure you," he said. "Can I help you with the chair?" He suggested I pull the chair across from the woman I had noticed earlier and sit down. She looked as surprised as I did. "Hi, Teresa." "Hank, what are you doing here?" she asked sincerely. "I guess for the same reason as you." "Let me guess, Alan invited you here tonight?" "No, Charlene. I was supposed to meet her here at 8. "Yeah, and I was supposed to meet Alan here at 8. I sense a catch." Right at that moment, both of our phones started ringing with incoming messages. We both read our messages. "Let me guess, Charlene is running late and won't be able to come tonight?" "How do you— Oh, I see." "Yes, we were set up. It looks like our children have deceived us." The head waiter waited patiently, as if expecting something. "Teresa, since we're here, do you want to order something so we don't waste the evening? There's no point in leaving now." She agreed. "We can go ahead and order. I've heard good things about this place." "Me too," I said. I turned to the head waiter. "Yes, sir, can we have 2 menus, please?" "Oh, that's not necessary, sir," he said, clapping his hands twice. A moment later, 3 waiters emerged from the kitchen carrying 3 full trays. Without asking a single question, they laid out delicious-smelling dishes in front of us as if they already knew what should go where, and then quickly left. We were both stunned a second time. "How? When? But these are all my favorite dishes," Teresa exclaimed. "Mine too. It's almost like someone who knows us both well pre-booked for us, isn't it?" "Yes," she responded. "I have to say, if I'm surprised, I can imagine worse surprises." "You're right," I said, hinting at a double meaning. "I can guess why they set us up," she offered. "They knew you would never contact me. You made it clear how you felt about us when all this happened, and looking back now, I can't blame you, Hank. Honestly, I don't mind since it's just you, but if you were here with you, I would never have sat down." I clarified. "He? Do you mean Bob? Are you saying you don't know?" She asked in surprise. "I don't know. Did something happen to him? I haven't spoken to him since Glenda died, and the children know better than to mention it to me." "Understand. Well, that explains a lot. A lot of water has passed under the bridge. Do you want to hear the story?" "Teresa, my evening is free. I have no other plans for today. You intrigue me. Okay, but I warn you that you may hear his name many times during the course of my story. More than a year has passed. I think I can handle it without flashes. Carry on. Teresa began. About 3 weeks after Glenda's memorial service, Bob said he felt something was wrong and went to his regular doctor, who referred him to a specialist. He was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. The only recommended treatment was radical surgery. The cancer was so advanced that every last trace had to be removed during the invasive procedure. They cut many blood vessels and nerves, and after rehabilitation, he realized that the operation was the reason he could no longer have intim. This news shocked me. I didn't know anything about this. The children did a good job of protecting me from new information about his condition. She noticed the look of surprise on my face and continued, I hope you'll forgive my frankness, Hank, but I've been so close to you and Glenda that I don't see any problem in having a sensitive conversation. I nodded in agreement. After the operation, he received regular radiation treatment, which greatly affected his mental and emotional state. But in the end, his disappointment got the better of him. He became deeply depressed but refused counseling. As a result, he became rude and verbally abusive, drinking heavily. When he lost his job, everything changed for the worse. He started beating me. I refused to remain a victim. My divorce from Bob was finalized last week. Hank, I haven't been with a man in over a year. My mind raced at what I heard. Although I would never say it out loud, I immediately thought, karma. Then my thoughts returned to the vision of the woman sitting in front of me. I didn't know, Teresa. Honestly, I don't know what to say. I had no idea about his diagnosis or how he treated you. Looking back, I feel stupid and petty for turning my back on both of you. It's a pity that I wasn't there for you. You don't deserve what happened to you. Just like you don't deserve what happened to you, Hank. It seems that we both received an unfair blow of fate. I put my hand on hers. We can't change the past, but maybe we can do something about the future. I stood up, moved my chair next to hers, and kissed her. Immediately after the kiss, we heard a group of people jump up and exclaim yes, vigorously, raising their hands. We noticed that all our children and their spouses were sitting at a large table in the far corner of the room, where they could watch us without being noticed. We laughed until our sides hurt and we couldn't catch our breath. The sweetness of our children's gesture, coupled with the love Teresa and I shared over the years and the hardships we endured, brought us together into a unique union in which the clouds cleared and the sun shone again. We told the kids they still had to pay the bill. It's funny, all 5 couples fought fiercely for the privilege of doing this. What do you think of our story today? In my opinion, if one of the partners does not agree to certain changes, then there is nothing more to talk about. No means no. How did you feel when you realized your wife had broken the agreement? Write in the comments. Until new videos.